Right then. So hello again. I'm Liam Mullins. For those of you who don't know me, I work at the Seven Stars, and on behalf of Media for All, I'd like to welcome you to this week's MEFA Matters. So Media for All was founded in 2018 by the wonderful Naren Patel, and it's made up of BAME role models in the advertising industry. And our focus is about how we can help recruit, retain, and help people from BAME communities to really rise within their organisations and within the wider industry. So this platform was born a few weeks ago, very, very shortly after, the tragic death of George Floyd, where we all looked at each other and said, are we doing enough? How can we help more? And how can we bring about the conversations that really need to happen in media and the wider advertising industry? And we really feel that part of our role is about bringing that conversation and education to the table. It was about giving a forum for people to ask difficult, awkward questions and help them to ensure that people have the right language and vocab to have those conversations, because quite often not knowing the right words to say or not knowing the right things to ask halts and hinders any progress that we could make. So today's topic is really focused on how we help people to really thrive in the advertising industry. And we settled on that as a topic for today because it was really clear that as questions were coming through each week, that people of colour in media and in advertising had a completely different lived experience than that of their white colleagues. And we know that that's not good enough. And we know that as a joined up industry, we all need to work together to make that change. So the issue is, not only do people find it difficult to get in the industry in the first place, and we're going to do a bit more of that next week's webinar, but once they're in the industry, people from BME communities are paid less, they're less likely to be promoted, and when they look up to get inspired by leaders and people around them, they're definitely less likely to see people like them. And we all know that seeing people who look like you is a really important thing to believe that you can grow and you can thrive and flourish within any organisation and be really motivated when they're there. So this week we've got some fantastic MEFA mentors, and those of you who are regulars to our show, I don't know if I can call it a show yet, it might still need to be called a webinar, but those of you who are regulars will have seen some of these lovely faces before. So these are all MEFA role models and MEFA mentors, and if you really want and what we can help you with is, if you want a mentor yourself, get onto our website and you can sign up there. We can make sure we matchmake you with over 50 brilliant people from BAME communities who are there to help out doing just that. But let me introduce people. Shups, give us a bit of a wave. So Shups is Commercial Director at ForwardPMX. Good afternoon. Alvin is also Commercial Director down at Beanos Studios. Bav works down at ITV, is the sponsorship controller down there. Mihir is our head of broadcast. Hi Mihir, over at Total Media. And Collette is founder of that brilliant brand consultancy for social change, Brand by Me. So hello, Collette. As we're going through this afternoon, we should be on between 30 and 40 minutes. So as we're going through, if you've got questions, and I know you always do, please share them in the Q&A box down below. And as we're going to go through, we're going to make sure that we pick those up and we come back and answer as many of them as we can. Those of them that we don't get to answer, we'll always review as a team at the end of the week, and we push that content into our thinking for subsequent sessions. So I'm going to start with a question that I'm going to go around the room to everybody here shortly. And I guess the question is about, you guys have obviously done brilliantly within the organisations, got fantastic careers. What's the one thing that someone's done for you, or what's the one thing that an organisation has done for you to make you feel like you could thrive in the advertising industry? And if maybe you haven't always had that experience, what's the one thing that you wish you would have had sooner to help you get to where you've got to? So Shoops, I'm going to start with you on that.
Hi guys. So I think in terms of what I've had that's helped me accelerate my career and move up in my career has been sponsorship. And this wasn't overt sponsorship. I think this was more covert sponsorship. I had an MD who I would go to with things that I'd seen around the business. We were a growing business. So as is always the case with a growing business, there's always new challenges, new opportunities that would arise. And I'd go to him with an idea. He'd ask me to kind of flesh it out a little bit more. And then he'd kind of go, yeah, fine, why don't you go ahead and have a go at that? Why don't you try that? And off the back of that, there were new departments created, there were new jobs created. And I think, what he did is he had faith in me. So I'd go to him almost hesitating and going, this is probably a really stupid idea, but wanted to tell you this. And, he had a really, really open door policy. So you could go to him with any ideas. And like I said, he would give you the time of day, he'd listen to you, he'd feedback, and he'd also empower you to act on those. But that came quite late on in my career. I've been in the industry for 15 years. And earlier on, there was a similar situation where actually I was offered a position, which I turned down. And you know, instead of taking that as, you know, my refusal, I think if I had been pushed to go, well, no, we want to support you. We want you to have a, you know, make a go of this, and we're behind you 100%, don't worry. Then maybe I would have actually excelled in my career a lot more. So I think there's probably two instances there where sponsorship has been positive and the lack of sponsorship has had an impact on my career.
Love that. Thanks, Shubs. I think having someone to believe in you, having space for you to be able to move into it and giving you, you know, the belief that you can do it is absolutely critical. Bav, hello, mate. Have you got anything to add to that? Have you, what would that personal thing that you've kind of had?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd echo what Sup said there, the first point in particular. Having people trust you and encourage you to look beyond your core role, identify new opportunities that you can add value to the business in, but also grow and learn simultaneously is invaluable. So I've had that experience as well. Actually, the thing I was going to talk about was more industry related rather than specific to an organization. And that is the fact that we work in this brilliant industry. I often talk about it as being an informal industry that, you know, where it's possible to be incredibly professional, but also have fun. And part of that is that it's a relationship industry. And so getting to know people, building great connections, building a network, I think is invaluable again. And it's definitely something that has helped me thrive. Every time I've moved, it has come off the back of a recommendation from somebody else in the industry. Every job I've kind of explored has been through a connection that I've made along the way. So, you know, advice to people would be to try and think, not in a cynical way. You don't build connections just to have that end goal. You build connections because it's the right thing to do, but because it's that kind of an industry. And then, you know, it pays back sometimes.
I think, Bav, it's something that I've always found a challenge to do, is like that, you know, networking or connecting with people and having conversations can be difficult and intimidating, but once you build a network of supporters and people around you, I think it can make it a hell of a lot easier to have people to ask for advice and stuff like that. Yeah,
and also there are so many brilliant bodies, you know, in the industry that encourage these kinds of things. So networking events, the kind of speed mentoring stuff that we do. And my advice is always, whenever you meet people, just connect with them via LinkedIn or social media, drop them an email. It can be soft touch. You don't, you know, it doesn't, as you say, for some people, it can be intimidating to reach out to people, but you know, there are always ways and means of doing so that fit your personality and your approach to the world.
Wicked. Thanks, Bav. Collette, coming to you on that question, you know, I'm sure you've got a couple of good examples of how you got where you've got to, but also some things that you wish had maybe happened differently or happened sooner. Do you mind sharing some of that with the team?
Yeah, thanks so much. And hi, everybody. Just first of all, I love what Bav has just said about the power and importance of networking. And it's something, that's something that I wish I had taken into account and sort of understood throughout my career, even until my introduction and really understanding the value of networking has come way too late in my career and relatively recently. So I would just endorse that. And building on what Ship said in terms of the power of sponsorship. So I guess I'll talk about one thing I did get. So I used to work in advertising. I had a decade in the industry before I moved, and I've had 20 years in this industry. When I was in advertising, my first boss was an amazing Black woman called Sarah Jenkins. And that linked to what Liam said, I felt, because I had a boss who was a Black woman, the one thing I've never felt I had to do is sort of code switch or really mask who I am even if it's got me into trouble at times. So don't get me wrong, by being myself, it has sort of held me back, but I never felt compelled to do that. And actually I felt quite the opposite. And that's because I had SJ as my first boss, who showed me how to be, you know, a Black woman with integrity and leadership and lead as us. That was so powerful. It just lodged itself in my brain. But I guess then beyond there, from an advertising industry point of view, I think what I would have benefited from is, I guess, some of just a much more zero tolerance approach to racism, microaggression, gaslighting, these behaviors that were just commonplace. And it wasn't only a zero tolerance approach, but also, you know, even understanding and acknowledging their thing, it just wasn't. So every time I highlighted these, I got they pushed back. And I only recognized this because I had the opposite experience when I then moved into charity sector. I joined Barnardo's, and an opportunity came up in terms of maternity cover. I got promoted to a head of. I was also then, at the time of giving promotion, so rather than just being handing this promotion and thrown in the deep end, I was given a lot of leadership support and training to help me to link to what Shup said in that role. So I wasn't set up to fail, and I think that's key. The opportunity, then some support around that. And then the third thing, I was given a massive sort of remit in terms of basically helping Barnardo's really like drive and change kind of brand strategy and embed who we were today. And I was given that remit. So not only did I have the title and the support, I also had a really clear opportunity to show my strengths and my skills. And that was down to my boss at the time, who was Diana Tickell, who is now Chief Exec of NABS. So I guess that sponsorship comes into it, but also I think those three things, an opportunity to thrive. And bear in mind, I was, you know, not using things like, well, you haven't got a decade of experience, because at that point, you know, you're not going to find necessarily a person of color that has that, or, oh, you haven't got this, but giving me an experience and looking at my skills, giving me training and support so I could grow into the role, and giving me a clear remit to prove myself. And those three things, I think, are what enabled me to thrive at that organization for a number of years. And I felt really happy there. And, you know, then I had a legacy in the charity sector that I will not look, you know, that changed my whole career and life. So.
Thanks, Collette. I love a couple of things you said there. I think that whole code switching, I've not heard of it referred to as that, which probably makes me sound a bit thick, but, you know, that whole, you know, being able to be who you are is so important, and not feeling like you have to change. And, you know, it's difficult to say this in the current climate with redundancies and with, you know, it's tough out there, but I've always felt like if you're not feeling like you're thriving, if you're feeling like you don't match the culture of the place that you're at, that's the time to get out. And, you know, when you're in a world where actually the culture of a place is you need to wait and do this many years, then you need to do this, then you need to do this, that's never going to change institutionally how inherently sometimes racist the industry is, because you're always going to be queuing behind hundreds of more people that don't look like you, or that come from a background of what already exists there. So, you know, I love that. And I think, Mihir, from your perspective, as you know, you still, how many more months have you got as our rising star, my friend?
I think three maybe.
No, look, it sounds like you're nailing it, and you we know that you're top bloke. And have you had that help to get there? And
yeah, I would say throughout my career, I've had some amazing managers who were probably the right manager for those stages of my career. So kind of teaching me the groundings and showing me the ropes, allowing me to network and all those sorts of things. And I think since I moved to social media, the key thing has been that I've been given opportunities, and it's opportunity. And it sounds so simple, but I feel that often that's the thing that holds people of colour back in the industry, is that they're not given the same opportunities that that other people are given in the industry. And I'm going to say that is probably even more so in the TV space. TV is very much seen as kind of a bit of an old boys club within the industry. That one makes it difficult previously made it difficult for kind of women to thrive in, and also that it's a very kind of white middle class dominated media within our industry. However, what I would say is that I was really luckily given an opportunity when my boss was meant to speak on a panel at an event, and I think at the time I hadn't been given a promotion 6 months prior to that I thought I was ready for at the time. But in hindsight, I don't think I was ready for it. But she and my boss went to be on a panel, a big conference, a big TV conference, and she had to pull out on the last minute. I don't know, had a dentist appointment or something like that. And instead of just pulling out, she put me forward for it. So she gave me the opportunity to go and speak at the panel, and she also gave me the job title that I was aiming for to make it seem like I was more senior. I'm sorry if there's anyone from the conference organisers on this call at the moment, but it was that opportunity and that kind of faith that she showed in me that I could go and represent Total Media. I could do myself a good service and the company and hold my own on a panel with people who were 10, 15 years more experienced than I was, who had done maybe possibly even hundreds of panels, whereas this was my first one at a big conference. So I think being given the opportunity and shown that support has been the key for me. And since then, I've been given every opportunity. I don't want this to sound like I'm reading off my CV, but I've been given opportunities to go on kind of like Sky News and BBC News and things like that. And it could have been so easy for someone more senior in my agency to be like, actually, no, you can't do that. I'm going to do that. But they've let me do it and been happy with me to represent the agency at all these levels.
I think, Mihir, there's two things there that I'm hearing, that they've definitely, using your language, they've let you, but do you know what? You've gone and done it yourself anyway. You've put yourself forward, and it probably was a very easy thing for them to let you do because you put yourself out there to do it. And I guess it's that balance, isn't it, between having the opportunity and then also having the confidence and the belief in you that you could step forward into that space.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right. It's a two-way thing that you have to have the confidence, but also that confidence comes with your company having confidence in you as well. But no, I have pushed for what I've wanted, but as I say, and as you've mentioned, that I've been given the support to do it as well.
Cheers, Mihir. Alvin, have you got anything to add? I asked a question knowing that you have, but let's pretend this is more of a panel show than it is.
One thing to add, Liam, I noticed you got a haircut. It's looking pretty...
I did. Although my kids have said I only got it done halfway, the barber got tired because they've only done the back and the sides of it. So I've been having a lot of grief off the kids. He said,
well, they don't know style like we all do. I got mine done as well, but they couldn't do my beard, so my beard just looks crazy. So I don't know how long I might go for a Gandalf kind of.
You look great, mate. You look great.
Thank you. Yes, the question. I think everyone's made some. I think what's interesting is the points of related to kind of networking opportunity. I think that's really important. And I think with my career, I think what allowed me to progress quicker than maybe other people doing a similar role than I was my ability to network outside of my organization, but also outside my industry. I think it's so easy for us to all be bubbles. It's so, especially, depending on the size of your company, it's so easy just to be isolated to your company. I think especially if you are potentially a person of color and you haven't come from a certain background, you may have limited opportunities if you haven't expanded your network. And I think that's been a real positive. In terms of my manager at the time at the Hook, Andy Fiddler, who allowed me to go networking, he allowed me to, rather than him doing it, he got me to do all the keynotes for the company. And I'd never done keynotes before. He told me, go to Amsterdam, go to London, do this, do that. And he got me to do it. So that's an amazing opportunity. So I think that's been a really big thing. And I think it's just really important that if I'm a person of color or if I'm a leader, I need to ensure that those opportunities are there to be had. And I think I hear a lot of people say, well, yeah, there are opportunities, but the talent isn't there. I've heard that a lot. Or, there's plenty of I think, what's the term, brass rings, but actually you need to really empower people to take advantage of those opportunities. I guess from a negative point of view, I guess for me, I feel like I got into media quite late in my life. I joined in my mid to late 20s, and I could have gone there earlier because I didn't even know media was even a career. I know we're going to be probably talking about next week, but I just didn't even know it was even a career for someone like me, to be totally frank. So all the people I knew from university who went to media tend to come from a certain type of background. They had family connections, so I remember thinking, well, obviously I can't do that. I've got to do something else. So I think that's something that needs to obviously be addressed very, very quickly, especially now.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Alvin. I think half the people that get into media from whatever background fall into it by accident, but then certainly it's not seen as one of those, lighthouse careers for people to go and find their way into. And actually, there's a big piece of work to be done to make it a bit more of an aspirational place to be. You know, how many people sit there trying to explain to your mum what you do for a living? I still can't make her understand it. She thinks I make the ads. Thanks for that, Alvin. I think just I've got a question which, you know, if we imagine with a magic wand and, you know, we could almost tomorrow we could wave something away that would immediately make it better. Shucks, what in your opinion, if you could change one thing about the ad industry tomorrow to make it more of a place where if you come from somewhere that's not white, middle class or white, any class, to help you thrive more?
I think there's a couple of things that I can draw on. So I'm actually looking at, like, you know, how do I get to the next level? As far as I'm concerned, my career should continue to move on and upwards. And I've gone to a lot of people inside my my bubble, so to speak, Alvin, and also outside of that, and asked for input. And you know, what I get back is, oh, you know, you've got everything it takes. And in some instances, actually, I've had, you've got everything it takes, but you do also have to consider that you're a woman of colour, and those things, unfortunately, may play a part in you not getting those opportunities. And I think there's a bit around kind of give honest feedback. Like, so, you know, telling someone that they've got everything it takes probably isn't right if they're not getting the opportunities, and if they're not, you know, if they're going for opportunities but not making it through. So giving proper feedback. But then just kind of saying that because you're a woman of colour, you've got more hurdles to overcome. Yes, we all know that, but how do you overcome those hurdles? How can you help me positively move forward and break down barriers? You know, are there organisations you can point me towards where you can see that those barriers have already come down? Are there certain mentors you can, you know, put me in touch with? I think it's kind of beyond just the general advice. It's kind of actually making the effort and you know, putting people in touch with the right people. And I'm slowly starting to do that now. So I think a lot of people have mentioned how they came into the industry quite late, and they've, you know, been looking at networks quite late. You know, Collette, you talked about that. I'm the same. You know, I've been working for 20 years, in the industry for 15, and I've only just started to grow my network. And that was actually because of you know, a few women that I rate very, very highly in my network who started to say, you need to do something here. You know, you need to progress and you need to move forward. But I don't think there's enough men who are doing the same. So if I look around me and I look at who's supporting me, I've got a lot of women that are supporting me, but I don't think that there are a lot of men that I can say are doing the same and putting as much time and effort into helping me build my career and move in the right direction and help break down those barriers, or help identify where those barriers may not be. Because actually sometimes it can take a lifetime to break down some barriers. And it might be easier to go, well, actually, there's a business over here or an organization over here where you may actually be able to fulfill everything that you want to do, and is a great organization to work for that you may not have ever considered. So I think there's a piece around feedback, and there's a piece around actually really signposting people in the right direction so that they can make tangible moves in their career.
Thanks, Shirks. And I think your thing about feedback is spot on. And I know Alia, also a MEFA mentor, and she, you know, she definitely endorses that point. And there was a thing doing arounds on LinkedIn today about, it's probably been, you know, it's probably an old story about Sheryl Sandberg and a chap who worked for her, and the fact that he'd, you know, he was flying, but then he asked feedback, and all his team, there was lots of stuff he was doing wrong. And it's that thing about embracing feedback. And, you know, other clients says it to me, feedback's gift, Liam, and I roll my eyes. But there is a thing that, you know, being able to take feedback, and if it's constructive, if it's authentic, it can definitely help move you forward. And you, I guess, annoyingly, you have to ask for that yourself a little bit, but managers, good leaders should give it.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, you know, early on when I moved into my current position, I knew that I had done some radical, I'd made some radical changes, and I knew that there was a little bit of unease within the business. So I actually openly went out to, I think, 20, 25 people within the business who I was working quite closely with, and said, feedback, do a 360 for me. I was able to address those things. But I think what I'm talking about now is beyond that. people that are in touch with you and where you're asking for feedback, be honest with that feedback and say it how it is. If you've noticed something that needs to change or noticed something that needs to, that could be improved, say it, because unless we know it, it's going to be difficult to do.
Thank you for that. Bav, just on that, if you get your magic wand out and say, this is the thing I would change tomorrow, have you got something that comes to mind?
Yeah, I have. Just before I get into that, just again on Shubs's point about feedback, it's a really, really important one. But understanding that not everybody is as comfortable with asking for or giving feedback, so it's something that you can work on and develop. And potential shortcut to that is there's a great book called Radical Candor by a lady called Kim Scott. That's definitely worth a read if that's something you find challenging. In terms of the magic wand, I think I'll go pretty big and say I'd love to eradicate, I'd love people to firstly acknowledge that it exists and then to eradicate unconscious bias. So that, that's something, if I could make that happen across major corporations, I think that would make a huge difference to allowing people to thrive, because until, as much as we champion the cause and we're trying to make a difference, we need other people to get on board with that. And people need to acknowledge that there's an issue that needs to be resolved before you can resolve it. And I know in my company we're looking into making mandatory unconscious bias training and for all senior leadership team, and then also adding in a kind of inclusive training for all aspiring managers. So that kind of thing will really help people broaden out their thinking and their approach to recruitment, progression, etc. And hopefully not see us as people of colour, but just see us as people who are great at what we do.
Amen to that, Bav. Thank you, mate. We've got a question in here from Mark Young. Hi, Mark. He's said, Collette, you talked about Diana Tickle and Mihir. I know you alluding to the lovely Liz Duff. I think, Collette, if you could both have a think, and I'll come to you first, Collette. What was the thing that Diana did that gave you that confidence to succeed? What was that thing that really made you feel you could do it?
Yeah, so I'll give a few examples actually, and I'll give them because they are the exact opposite of behaviours that I experienced in advertising at the hands of very poor leadership. So linked to the feedback point, obviously feedback is really good and it's essential. Sometimes though, what people are giving as feedback is actually just stereotypes, right? So, don't be loud, don't be angry, all this, they're just peddling stereotypes. That is not helpful feedback. If you're receiving that continuously, that is actually damaging your sort of development, and that's happened to me in advertising. When I got to Bernardo's, Diana, so there was a couple of things she did. One was any feedback she gave was objective, one-to-one, and designed to help me plug gaps. So I know one of my gaps, for example, was around financial management, and it, rather than sort of penalizing me when I got it wrong the first time, because I'd never done the level of budgeting that you need to do client side compared to agency, she kind of sat down, took me through it, explained what was important, and gave me very good and meaningful feedback that I could then address and work on. The second thing is, and Mihir, I put a comment in the chat because Mihir alluded to this, is she would actually step aside to give me opportunity. So a really bad thing that agency folk do to clients is they will step over your head to go to the most senior client, right? And when I was given a remit as head of brand and digital at Bernardo's, I had the remit for kind of above line advertising. My agency at the time, BBH, they'd been used to working with Diana. So when they got this new client, they didn't want to work with me, they wanted to work with Diana. So they try and jump over my head. Diana wouldn't allow it. And actually, I think that's something for leaders to understand. It is flattering when people want to come to them. But honestly, if you're white, if you're male, what you're doing, and you have people of colour below you, what you have to take into account that by feeding into that flattery or want to be the one with the agency, you are actively blocking and holding back people of colour. It takes an added lens. It's not just poor behaviour. You're actively complicit in this kind of systemic racism. And so she just wouldn't do it. She's like, no, go to Collette. No, this is Collette. And she was really hard lines about it to the agency. No, you need to listen to Collette. And really, and then if people would, say, So I was known for being a bit feisty. You can see it.
No.
When people moaned, at one point I shouted at the agency in a meeting because I got really mad about kind of this issue and representation. And people complained and maybe said, oh, it was better professional. I mean, it wasn't. But she was like, well, you know, Collette wouldn't have had to shout if you have listened the first time. So just that endorsement, and it gave me a chance to really, and then the final thing, I guess, is giving me opportunities based on my strengths. So one of the things I learned as I moved into client side was that I have a real skill. I run an agency that do it now in terms of brand strategy, and that strategy, she gave me opportunities that allowed me to develop and enhance that and demonstrate that. And I think that also gave me sort of lots of confidence in knowing that I was really good and in understanding that. So I think kind of that kind of approach, the stepping aside, the learning how to give meaningful feedback and understanding, not feedback that kind of held me down or lost my confidence. In our panelist book, someone said there's this thing about, I think the final thing is, there's this thing about, and some of you might feel with this, that if you're black or from a minoritized ethnic background, you have to work 20 times harder than other people. So because you're having to jump through so many hoops. Diana just didn't allow that. I didn't have to jump through more hoops than my counterparts to do my job. It just wasn't a thing. And I was, you know, when I said I was given an opportunity, it wasn't, here's an opportunity for you to shine, no money, no promotion. I was given a promotion and money and support. And that is what opportunity looks like. It is not just more work for the same kind of responsibility. So I hope that helps. That's a kind of how, and they're really practical things. It's not just, you know, I love Diana, but it's not just because Diana is gorgeous. It is actively because these are the things that leaders need to do for people to thrive. And they must think about their own behavior. And that's really important.
Thank you, Collette. Mihir, have you got anything to kind of build on that? You know, you mentioned that you've given a lot of support by your manager. Have you got anything to build on those points that Collette just made?
I think everything Collette has said is really kind of like resonates and brings a lot of memories back to me of what's happened to me over the last kind of 2.5, 3 years with my manager. It's things like, and I said it before, it was giving opportunity and showing trust, and it was showing trust from a really early stage. So for example, literally in my second week of being at Social Media, I was allowed to go and lead a pitch. And I mean, that's pretty unheard of. That my boss actually said, Liz said, oh, don't worry, Mihir can do this. And that kept happening. And it got to the point where when people come over to ask a question that I could answer, and they were asking it directly to Liz, because Liz has been there for longer and she was slightly more senior than me, she'd be like, oh, Mihir can answer this. And she started sending people my way to kind of change the behavior of people, that is actually, Mihir's really capable and he can do all of this. And it was, as Collette said, it was kind of the whole stepping aside. It's like, actually, no, there's someone else that's really credible. Don't get me wrong, it also helps take workload off Liz as well, which is an added benefit. But it got my name out there really early. It allowed people to realise that I was capable and allowed them to build trust in me. But the other thing that Liz did that was really amazing was set objectives for me. So identify the areas that I really need to focus on. Not me as a TV buyer, but me as an individual in the industry as well. So kind of listen to my aspirations, what I wanted to achieve in the short term and the kind of longer term. And then really kind of help me put together a path of what I needed to do. And similarly also found the right training that was relevant to me. So it wasn't training that everyone else at my level was having, is what I needed to do at the time. So it could be just because of the experience I had, it could be because of the background that I have. But yeah, I just feel like everything was really tailored to me as opposed to a generic solution, which has obviously really helped me thrive.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mihir, for adding on that. And so one of the things we're hearing is, you know, Collette made the point about, you know, feedback. How do I best phrase this? So people saying, because you're black, you're loud, you sound angry and all of that. All of that is BS, right? All of that feedback that comes in that way is coming from a place of, to what somebody said about getting rid of unconscious bias. All of that feedback about the persona that you're putting onto someone who works for you is BS. It's you're coming from where you are, not coming from that person. We need to sort that out. That's what we need to do. And we've got a few questions that have come through, and I'm going to go to Alvin on this. And for every brilliant story we've heard of a manager that was helpful or supportive, there are probably 100 where managers don't know what they're doing or getting it wrong. Now, I try and see things from both sides of the beach ball, right? Some of it might be, are they equipped enough? Have they got enough support themselves? Do managers out there who are going to be predominantly white, do they have enough skills and experience and ability and training to help make sure they're bringing along people that come from different backgrounds to their own, and how can we sort of start to change that? Sorry,
Yeah,
that was a rant from me then.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I kind of feel like it's so easy. We're all busy people, right? We're all super busy. And it's so easy, I think, especially the more senior you get up in an organization, it's so easy to just go with the status quo. Just do what's worked well before. Just, that's it. You know, that talent's great. Just keep going with that talent. Keep going down that route. So I think actually, firstly, it takes a genuine mindset to actually, rather than just go, you know what, let's try and get more BAME talent. Actually, it takes a real genuine mindset to be able to think, okay, how can I help talent genuinely thrive? And not even just BAME talent. I see a lot of agencies where it's really hard for any young talent to thrive, to be completely frank, because it's you know, the way they're structured, the way they bring talent in. So there needs to be a clear direction for managers to instill. I guess it's very important for managers of BAME talent to actually look at, okay, where can they help talent grow? Because I think that's their legacy. If you think about it, your legacy is going to be in the, like, for example, we've mentioned so many names today because they've instilled a legacy, you know, and I think they've made an impact on us. I think it's really important for managers to actually think, right, where can I take a little bit of my time, like a tiny bit of my time, but instill it in certain talent, help them grow, help them develop to the point where, like Mihir was saying, it means less work for me, but it means it's going to be amazing for the industry, it's amazing for the company. It makes a lot of sense. I think it just takes that switch, that acknowledgement to think, hang on, how can I spot that talent? How can I, because it's so, I think from any level, especially with BAME, but in any talent, it's so easy for someone to start at one level and that's it. They do the job day in, day out. It's really hard. I'm quite fortunate because, to be totally frank, I've been in sales. I generate revenue. It's quite easy to move forward. I bring in more money. Everyone's happy. But again, I still had to prove myself in every step of the way. And it was very clear what I had to do to progress. So I think there needs to be that switch. It needs to be made clear to everyone, you know, okay, this is where you could see yourself going in 5-6 years' time. And ideally, if there's someone of color who's at that senior level as well that you can look up to, that would be obviously ideal. But of course, it doesn't always happen. So I think it just needs to be that perspective. I say it like it's really easy. It's really easy to just turn out. It really isn't. It really takes a concerted effort to actually make it a priority rather than just tick a box.
Yeah. You know what? I couldn't agree more. And I think if we take the issue of race to one side for a millisecond, which we shouldn't do on this panel, but if we, for a millisecond, Collette, and just say, managers aren't good enough at bringing people along and they need more support generally. And if we're in a world where the industry is, and you know, is inherently has racism issues inbuilt within it, that's only going to be felt more disproportionately with people from backgrounds that are non-white. And that is why it's such a big issue. There we go, Collette. I pulled it back around at the very end of that statement. Bav, we had a question coming in here. Forgive me, I can't remember who it was from. But it was about, it was linked to the fact that what Liz had done with Mihir and said, Liz couldn't make it, I'm going to give it to Mihir. Could that be seen as positive discrimination? And is that, so Bav, in terms of that, is it just positive discrimination? And, you know, all of that, what about us? You know, the what about us, who love Twitter so much. So what about us? How would you describe how we should think about that positive discrimination, Bav? And Collette, I'm sure I've heard you talk about this before. We'll come to you after too to let us know your view.
Yeah, I think it was from somebody called Scott from Ocean Outdoor, actually.
Sorry, Scott.
So look, I can't speak for Mihir's specific example. That's obviously his, but for me, it's not about positive discrimination, right? It's about who's best for an opportunity, who's best for a job, and approaching that with an open mind. So, you know, in Mihir's situation, Liz, who I know really well, will have been looking and going, right, Mihir's the best person to step up into this opportunity, and that's what we're trying to achieve, right? We don't want positive discrimination, such a tough term to deal with anyway. We're not looking for that. We're looking for equal opportunity. We're looking for people to not see colour when they're assessing recruitment and progression of people in their careers. And, you know, so businesses do have targets that they need to achieve to have a more diverse workforce. They're doing that. because it's the right thing for their business. There's loads of proof points out there about why a more diverse culture enhances business performance. So they're doing it for genuine business reasons, as well as because it's morally, ethically the right thing to do. And it's then about how you go about doing that. And like I say, it shouldn't be about, oh, we're going to guarantee this role is for a BAME person. It should be, we're going to get the best person for this job. We're going to be really open-minded about what the talent pool coming into interview for that role looks like. I think that's how we should think of it. Collette, have you got any kind of thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, I have. I guess the thing for me, I think we have to, so there's a couple of terms that I think I want us to move away from. The one is positive discrimination. The other one is race card. Phrases like this belong in another era because it is not relevant now. The reason it's not relevant is because our system is in itself baked in, racist and disadvantaged people of color. Therefore, you cannot introduce a system that even starts with equality. Have you seen, there's a diagram that goes around with like a big fence and people at different, I'll send it around. Anyway, point being, right? If the system was equal, it would be cool to say things like it's about meritocracy and all people having equal chances, but the system is broken. Therefore, in order to fix it, it means we are going to, and in order for this to be, you know, to kind of fix this, it means that we are going to do exactly what Bav said, is that we're going to have to, you know, descale people's eyes so they are truly being open and inclusive in who they think are right for these roles. But we are also going to have to, a bit like the starting line of a race and like sort of staggered starting lines, we're also going to have to counter the disadvantage that exists by giving a massive kind of push forward to underrepresented communities and people that have been historically held back. It is the only way. So let's not stop using that term positive discrimination or stigmatizing people for stepping aside and giving people of color opportunities, because it is what is needed. It is what is needed now. And that is it. And you know, sorry about positive discrimination. Sorry for seeing this. Sorry, you know, there was a Bloom poll that was done that said something like, there was something ridiculous, like 30% of, they polled leaders and 30% of white male leaders felt threatened by diversity initiatives because it held them back. Now, this is unacceptable thinking, and that's the kind of people that will use the language of positive discrimination. The answer is absolutely not. Sorry, while the system is broken and there is such disadvantage, we are going to give people some stepping stones, some building blocks so they can climb the walls. And then, you know, we're also going to work on breaking down those walls and barriers. And that's the work we need to do. So again, no positive discrimination, stop using the language, and yeah, suck it up and let's start doing the work.
It's kind of like, sorry, but I was going to say, it's kind of like when people see homeless people on the street and go, why you got a job? Go and get yourself a job. Why are you on the street? And they actually need help. They need an assistance. I know it's obviously an extreme reaction, but I couldn't agree. The amount of times I've heard those terms over the years has just been infuriating. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Thanks, Alvin. I think we've got time for one more question. And I guess, Ships, I'm going to come to you. And the question's around, you know, what we've seen people coming through. It's easy to say, if you can't be yourself, get out. Or if you're not accepted as who you are, you're in the right place. But what are your tips for, I think we've talked about before, Ships, you've said your authentic self. What are your tips for being able to live that life? And I guess that would probably be a nice one to finish up with at the end of this session.
So I think before I go into kind of how I can live my authentic self, I think it's really important to understand that if you are in a business where you don't see people that look like you or you know, sound like you, because, you know, let's not just bring in race, there's also socioeconomic backgrounds and have lived a life similar to you, then it's very difficult for you to be yourself. It's really tiring. Like, I've done that. I've lived a dual life, you know, throughout university and at work. And it is really tiring. So if you just imagine that burden that it puts on someone, yes, you're going to be irritable. Yes, you're going to be, you know, you're going to be shouting to be heard. And all of that stuff that you associate is actually because that person cannot be themselves. That is not their true self. It is someone who is trying to battle with their true self and trying to fit in. You know, and I think the problem is that businesses don't understand, and your managers don't understand that that's what you're doing. In order for them to understand, you actually need to be able to tell them, look, you know, I feel really uncomfortable with this, or, you know, I actually don't like the way you refer to me, or you use that language. But in order for you to be able to have those conversations, you need to be in a safe space. And so all of it boils down to psychological safety, and ensuring that every member of your team and every member that you interact with, it's not just your team, it's everyone you interact with, it you know, feels that psychological safety of being able to voice their concerns, of not having any kind of retaliation if they do voice their concerns. You know, we talk about having grievances, but we know how difficult it is for a grievance to be raised, because you fear for the retaliation that could come up. You fear for you being kind of outcasted by your teammates for being someone that's kind of snitched. Well, no, actually, you just need to have a really open culture. And you need to understand that you are going to make mistakes. So first is, no one's perfect. You are going to make mistakes. But if you're not told what those mistakes are, how are you going to fix it? And if you don't show that you're open to hearing about the mistakes you've made, then no one is going to feel safe telling you you've made a mistake. So in order for us to be our authentic selves, we actually first, and that's everybody, we first need to be in a psychologically safe space to be our authentic selves. And I think what you'll then start to see is that there isn't this whole push and pull individually between one life and the other. And you know, people aren't tired, they're not frustrated. There will still be some, but it's not that daily frustration that you get with that. And actually you'll get more productivity out of your teams, but also a more combined, a team that works really well together. And who understands each other and actually starts to speak up for each other as well, which means as managers, you're no longer doing any guesswork, because you're being told what your team needs. So Mihir, where you had a really tailored, path, you can start to tailor paths for the people in your team, start to understand what it is that they feel they need, that you feel they need, and together combined, you'll actually have a really good recipe for promoting people up the ranks. So I think representation is difficult, but if you can create representation today in the mix that we have and the pools that we have may be difficult, but you can start to move in the right direction by creating psychological safety, people being their authentic self, and you'll start to see people progressing if you make those opportunities available. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Thanks. It's really valuable, really helpful, and thank you for sharing that with us. Guys, thank you very much to amazing MEFA Role Models for joining us today. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks everyone else for joining us. We've had loads of registrations again today. We know there's a big event going on over at MediaTel, which I'd encourage you to go and check out this afternoon, again about, you know, D&I and everything that's going on, and some really good talks. I think, Collette, you've been in 2 places at once this afternoon. Someone's messaged me saying, who's got the real Collette? I can tell you that is us. We will always have the real Collette. We've always said that we believe it's everyone's responsibility to make things better. So this is meant to be a really inclusive and open invitation webinar. So we want as many people as possible to be part of this conversation. So help us by spreading the word, get your HR, your people teams to attend, tell your boss, tell your mates, right? So on that note, we will see you next Tuesday at midday. If you're listening and you'd like to get hold of a mentor, if there's things that you want information on, check out the MEFA website or get in touch with one of us. We've got loads of different resources and stuff that are not necessarily being created by us, but co-created that we can share with you. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you and enjoy the rest of your week. Cheers, guys.